If Congress kills this deal, not based on expert analysis and without offering any reasonable alternative, then it's the United States that will be blamed for the failure of diplomacy. International unity will collapse, and the path to conflict will widen.
That was President Obama on Thursday, warning Congress not to derail the tentative nuclear deal with Iran. Many Republicans in Congress, though, were unmoved.
There is no deal or framework with Iran. There's only a list of very dangerous U.S. concessions that's going to put Iran on the path to a nuclear weapon.
There's also Republican Senator Mark Kirk of Illinois likening the deal to the appeasement of the Nazis with an analogy to Neville Chamberlain. But this is not just about Republicans trying to torpedo what would be a signature foreign policy achievement for Obama. It's also his own party.
It's certainly a mixed bag of tricks, and we're going to have to assess it in these next few months while the bill and the details are being hammered out.
Democratic Congressman Ted Deutsch from Florida also greeting the deal with skepticism, saying that it's hard to trust Iran. The White House is not calling this a formal treaty. That means it doesn't need formal approval from Congress, but still, many in Congress are trying to change that with a bill that would essentially give them an up or down vote on the deal with Iran. And that bill, as of yesterday afternoon, now only one vote away from a veto-proof majority in the Senate. So all of this leads to the question, will Congress kill the deal with Iran? Joining us to talk about it, we have our panel for this morning. Nan Hayworth, she's a former Republican congresswoman from New York. Lauren Victoria Burke, managing editor at the site Politics 365 and a contributor to The Root. And Anna Marie Cox, a contributor to The Daily Beast. So thanks, everybody, for being here. Well, let me just start with this in terms of a lot of objections, or at least a lot of concerns being expressed by Congress. And again, that information we put up at the end there, one vote away in the Senate from a veto-proof majority on this bill the White House badly doesn't want. But let me put up the public opinion polling on this. This was an ABC Wall Street Washington Post poll this week. Before the terms of the deal were announced, just the concept of the deal had basically 2-to-1 support in the poll, 59-31. I mean, so the country seems to be saying, we like the idea of striking a deal with Iran. Congress saying something different. I mean, you've been there. What's your party going to do on this?
Well, I think we have to look at this deal, these negotiations, in terms of motivations, incentives, and verification. And I think David Frum made some excellent points about the dubious nature of being able to trust Iran in carrying out any terms of a deal if they won't agree to on-the-spot inspections. So politics aside, and it should not be a political issue at all. We understand that politics are obviously going to play into it, but those who are skeptical about this deal, and there are Democrats as well as Republicans, need to approach it from the standpoint of making sure that we are protecting America and its interests. And I think the president does need to heed the opponents of this deal and take them seriously, and they need to act in a way that would be serious and not political.
Well, yeah, I mean,
yeah,
so
what does that mean exactly? I'm actually just really curious about what it would mean to be serious and not political on this.
Well, in other words,
because it seems like they're being political.
Well, no, I think the objections that are being raised are reasonable objections and reasonable, appropriate criticisms. They shouldn't be couched in political terms, but we don't have strong reason to support.
But we heard the same criticisms before the deal was even made. Before the deal was even made, people were criticizing the deal. And so the same people criticizing the deal before it was made are criticizing it right now. Plus, you have the added complication, as you know, of people like Tim Kaine and even Nita Lowey sort of coming out. Well, Tim Kaine was, of course, having an argument with the president with regard to the War Powers Act.
Right.
So, and of course, the involvement of Congress. So it's likely that that sort of thing from the Democratic side will show up as well. But from the Republican side, we heard the same people, Tom Cotton, et cetera, and so on, criticizing the president before anything even happened.
Well, it seems like there's like 2 or 3 different things going on here. And one is just somebody like Tom Cotton has a worldview that's just fundamentally at odds with the White House. Just the concept of dealing with Iran That is something he doesn't want to do.
He's not making specific objections so much as he is making objection to the entire idea.
Also, he has no ideas on his side, so he's not saying, hey, I don't like this deal, I don't like what the president's doing, but let's do something else. He's not saying that.
And I want to say, anyone who makes the comparison to Neville Chamberlain is implicitly making the argument for war. I mean, like the whole analogy to Neville Chamberlain is saying the reason that Neville Chamberlain example resonates is because it implies, well, we should have gone after Hitler earlier. So if you're comparing Iran to Hitler, you're saying
it was also but we should say President Obama this week also invoked sort of the possibility of war, the possibility of conflict, and he basically was putting it out there. Look, we've put our best foot forward in terms of trying to strike this deal. If this deal evaporates,
but to hear that,
the alternative you seem to be saying, though, is war.
For Mark Kirk to say that, he's a moderate. So imagine, that's a Republican, that's Republicans in moderation. So imagine what we get.
He's a hawk, though. He is a hawk on foreign policy. He's a moderate on gay rights and stuff like that.
He's got an election coming up where he's got to be careful, one would think, and to say that right off the bat before the ink is even dry is pretty amazing. From what is a not so Tom Cotton-like Republican, but still, it's amazing.
I wonder if we'll
not get uniform support from Republicans, nor should he have. We have to take away. We have to think beyond the politics of this.
And again,
the partisanship. There are legitimate objections to this deal, and there are legitimate.
What does it mean, though? What does it mean to look beyond the politics of this? Because if Congress steps in on this, see, I have a conflict over the Democrat here. I do believe this president has done some executive overreach. The War Powers Act exists for a reason. What I find odd here is that usually the War Powers Act is invoked is because the president is going off half-cocked to get us into a war. I mean, this is a case where actually, it looks like we're trying to put the brakes on going into any kind of armed conflict, and the Congress is saying no, we would like to have more power. We would like to go a little further.
One point that members of Congress have made, and certain Democrats have made this point, is look, the sanctions that are at the heart of the negotiations here, the sanctions the Iranians want lifted, that we are using as sort of a carrot to get them to go over this, those are sanctions that were put in place by Congress. So if the administration, a different branch of government, is going to be out there negotiating over these sanctions, shouldn't Congress ultimately have a say about whether these sanctions that we put in place get lifted?
Yeah, that's sort of a new thing that's happened with this president. All of a sudden, Congress wants to get overly involved in things. I mean, this being an executive agreement, he doesn't actually need the vote in Congress, is my understanding. There may not be a direct vote in Congress. There'll be a lot of talk and a lot of hearings, et cetera, and so on. But when you hear people like Ed Royce, who's the chair of House Foreign Relations, already coming out and saying that, well, if there isn't on-the-spot inspections right here, right now, anytime, any place, that's sort of a bad sign from Congress. But, usually, of course, the politics stopped at the water's edge until this president came up. So, obviously, we're going to see a lot of interference from Congress.
This is the politicization has been from both sides of almost every issue. And the reality is that, I mean, it is a salient fact, and it is an unassailable truth that if Iran will not allow spot inspections, what are they trying to hide? If you have nothing to hide,
okay, but what's your idea?
Open it up.
Yeah, because they've already gotten pretty far on their nuclear, project without anything at all. With under sanctions and without us doing anything at all. So the question is,
all the more concern.
Do you keep this somewhat fragile, coalition of people who are putting pressure on Iran together, which is what happens if you do this deal? Because it's not just the United States making this deal, right? So if we either make our so the question is, if we can't keep that coalition together, putting pressure on them indefinitely, some people are going to flake off. This is an attempt to say, we're going to do some moderate lifting of sanctions. I think this is probably going to be in stages and not just all at once, like it says.
The lifting of the sanctions is still years away, ill-defined, but it's years away.
Right, and we're going to get some inspections, and we're hopefully going to at least put the brakes on whatever nuclear project they have.
We haven't put any significant brakes on them
because we haven't had any power to, and they haven't had any incentive to. But this gives them a little bit of an incentive to put some brakes on it. It gives us some power to go in and look at what they're doing. doing. I mean, if we hold out for prop inspections all the time, they're just going to say no, and they're going to keep on like doing piecemeal on their.
Leanne, give you the final word.
Yeah.
Instead, what we have is,
so what should we do instead?
Well, we should just
go ahead.
All reasonable people would like to see Iran not get a nuclear bomb. There's no question about it. That's not at issue. That's not at issue from either side of the aisle. But what is at issue is it worth endorsing a deal that will realistically only be a sham?
So if we don't endorse it, what are we doing?
The answer is no.
We're going to war.
All right, we got to end this one, but the debate certainly will continue here and probably in Congress. This is something to watch over the next few months. Still ahead, what is a state supposed to do when it runs out of water? California Governor Jerry Brown has some monumental plans. We'll be bringing you that coming up. But next, a new statue of Lucille Ball in her hometown is frightening local residents. We're going to show you that if you can bear it. Stay with us.